Nen, the power system of Hunter x Hunter, is arguably the best power system ever made. It's very smart, yet simple at the same time, and is one of the reasons why Hunter x Hunter is considered one of the best anime out there. So stick around, and by the end of this video, you'll be able to write your own master's thesis about Nen. So, let's get started. Aura is the same concept we know from other anime, like chakra in Naruto for example. It's the life force that every being has. However, most people are leaking charge constantly until they collapse/die. Nen is the name of the technique that uses this aura. Everyone has their own aura, but the vast majority of people can't manipulate it like Nen users can to do all kinds of crazy stuff. That's the fundamental difference between a normal person and a Nen user. As we go through this, keep a mental tally. I'll give you a way to figure out your specific aura type in a bit, so try to see where you fit in. But first, Nen has 4 base principles, which are the fundamentals that every Nen user, and we, real non-Nen users who are Hunter x Hunter fans, should know about. Let's start by talking about Ten. Ten is just the name for keeping your aura close around your body. You know that aura that revolves around the Nen user's body? They just tighten it. This makes it serve as protection and also slows aging, since it keeps your precious life energy from leaking away from your body. Zetsu is when you take that aura around your body and shut it down. The user closes their aura nodes so the aura stops leaking. By doing so, your presence becomes almost undetectable. Great for stealth, but terrible if you get punched because you have 0 protection. Then we have Ren. If Ten is holding it in, Ren is pretty much the other way around. A Nen user forces their aura nodes open to project a massive amount of energy outwards. This floods the body with raw power, amplifying physical strength and durability so the user can actually survive a heavy hit. It also works as a psychological weapon. By mixing in some hostility, the user creates bloodlust. A normal person exposed to this without protection will freeze up or even straight up die from the sheer pressure. It's a grind to maintain though. It usually takes a month of training just to extend the timer by 10 minutes. Finally, there's Hatsu. It's where the user take that raw energy from Ren and give it a specific function or property. Here, Nen stops being generic energy and becomes those unique abilities we love, like lightning, chains, or both rubber and gum. Okay, so those are the basics. Now let's look at the advanced stuff. I decided to put them here because they just show how careful Togashi was when crafting this power system, thinking about these kinds of little details that many other authors would just jump over. Well, the first one we're going to be talking about is Gyo. You focus aura into a specific part of your body, usually the eyes. It allows you to see things that are otherwise hidden, like traps, hidden using In, or very weak aura. Talking about In, this is the opposite. It hides your aura so your attack looks invisible. It's a sneaky way to land a hit without the opponent seeing it coming. And if you want to make sure nobody sneaks up on you, you use En. This expands your aura outwards like a giant radar bubble. Anything that enters that space, you feel it instantly. Now Shu lets you wrap your aura around objects. This can turn a harmless playing card or a shovel into a deadly weapon that cuts like a razor blade. For a more combat-oriented application, Ko is when you dump 100% of your aura into a single focal point. Like a punch, it hits like a truck, but it leaves the rest of your body unprotected. Ken is the defensive answer. You coat your entire body in a thick layer of aura to tank hits from all directions. It's safer, but it drains your stamina fast. Now, let's talk about the Nen types. And finding out what type you are, there are 6 types, and they usually match with a certain personality for each. And I mean usually, because it's based on a test that Mr. Hisoka himself gave us, so it's not 100%. The only way for us to know for certain is through the water divination test. However, I should say it's very intriguing and does have its accuracy. First up are enhancers. These guys focus on reinforcing their physical bodies or objects with aura, which makes them insanely strong and durable. This is considered by some the most balanced category and the best one for combat, which is debatable, but there is some good truth to it for sure. I think in the most recent arc, Togashi is trying a lot to balance the categories by expanding the capacities of emission and conjuration, for example. Because let's be honest, emission was kind of, no one's favorite category. With the exception, obviously, of that one person who's going to comment here saying it was their favorite category and such. However, what Togashi has not changed is the fact that enhancement has the best neighborhood in the Nen chart. In my opinion, if you disagree, I'd love to see some discussion in the comments. And by the way, Nen chart, I just pulled it out of nowhere. It's this beautiful diagram you can see right here. To put it simply, each category is one of those circles, and the category you belong to affects your proficiency to use the abilities of the other categories. Enhancement is up here, and its neighbors are emission and transmutation, which means an enhancer obviously can use enhancement with 100% potency. And the neighbors that I cited can be used by this enhancer at 80%, since they are the immediate neighbors. If we go down a bit for manipulation and conjuration, the enhancer can only use those to 60% proficiency. And going for the specialist part is 0%, because it's practically impossible to become a specialist as an enhancer. The only case we've seen of a non-specialist becoming a specialist is Kurapika, who's a conjurer, an adjacent category to specialization. And going back to where we left, allow me to explain what I mean by potency. Let's keep on the enhancement to make this simpler. Gon is an enhancer. When he uses his ability on the scissors form, the scissor is transmuted. Since he has only 80% proficiency in transmutation, that scissor is only 80% as strong as it would be if Gon was a natural transmuter. And it applies to all the other percentages. Personality-wise, enhancers are simple and determined. They never lie. They don't hide anything, and their actions are usually driven by their feelings. Basically, Gon in a nutshell. Next, we have transmuters. They change the properties of their aura to mimic something else, completely different, like electricity or sticky gum. Two good examples are Killua, who uses it on his lightning abilities, including Godspeed, which is kind of an ultra instinct, which is not something we think of initially as something that transmutation would be able to do. But he does by transmuting electricity that sends the signals to his brain, faster than the natural limit of the human body, which allows him to fight at godlike speeds. And there's no way I wouldn't cite Hisoka with his bungee gum. Personality-wise, they are whimsical liars. They are fickle, weird, and often hide their true intentions. Now, let's talk about the emitters. They are experts at separating aura from their body with minimal loss of potency, because aura wants to be next to the user's body, and the more you separate both, the weaker the aura gets, for any category including emitters. However, emitters can do this separation with minimal loss. That's why it's their specialization. There are the basic applications, such as firing it as blasts of aura in various different ways. Like Franklin does shooting bullets from his fingers, or Leorio punching people through portals, but it's not restricted to things like that. Because as we've seen in the Succession War, emitters can even create pocket dimensions, teleportation, and much more. Personality-wise, they are impatient and quick-tempered, similar to enhancers but way more volatile. Moving on to conjurers. This one is pretty straightforward, but creates some of the coolest abilities in the series. They basically materialize physical objects out of thin air using their aura. But there's a cost, because otherwise everyone would just be conjuring nuclear bombs. They usually can't make something super overpowered without paying a huge price for it, or adding very specific rules to it. And let's be careful here, because this isn't just for conjurers. This mechanic applies to every single category in the chart, and is the core mechanic of the entire power system. If the user wants more power, they have to pay for it. Let's take Kurapika and his chains for example, specifically his chain jail ability, which wraps around the target and forces them into a state of Zetsu, instantly shutting off their aura and leaving them powerless. You hear this and say, what is this? Kurapika must have trained his whole life to have an ability this OP. And yeah, he trained, sure, but he also placed a judgment chain around his own heart with a specific rule. He can only use that specific chain on members of the Phantom Troop. If he uses it on anyone else, he dies instantly. That massive risk is what gives the chain enough power to restrain physically stronger opponents like Uvugen. You can set a condition, like, I can only use this ability on Tuesdays, and suddenly that ability hits 10 times harder. But obviously only on Tuesdays, and just to reinforce, users of all categories make use of this core mechanic of Nen. Now about the personalities of conjurers, they are usually high-strung and overly serious. They analyze everything and tend to be super cautious, rarely jumping into a fight without a plan, which fits Kurapika perfectly. Next up are manipulators. These guys pour their aura into objects or people to control them. And honestly, this category is the stuff of nightmares because of what we call one-shot wins. If Illumi sticks a needle in their opponent, or Shalnark plants an antenna on their enemy, the fight is over. They literally lose control of their own body. Personality-wise, manipulators are logical and argumentative. They like to advance at their own pace. And while they do care about protecting their loved ones, they often do it in a very controlling way, basically saying, "I know what's best for you better than you do," which makes them pretty intense to deal with. Finally, specialists. Here, you can do all kind of crazy stuff that cannot be explained by the mechanic of any other categories, like stealing abilities, seeing the future, or using all categories at 100% efficiency. Chrollo is obviously the guy we all think of. He has his skill hunter ability. He can steal other people's powers and store them in a book to use later, provided he can clear the strict conditions required to steal them, which are witnessing the ability with his own eyes, asking questions about it, and getting answers, and getting the victim's palm on the book's cover, all within 1 hour, which would be very hard for, let's say, Gon. But since Chrollo can also rely on his intellect, it's a very good fit for him. Also, Tyrannus from the latest arc fits here perfectly with his insanely complicated future sight. Personality-wise, they are independent and charismatic. They have this natural aura, pun intended, that draws people in and makes them natural leaders. Now let's talk about another important aspect of Nen. Well, logic says killing the user stops the ability, but Nen doesn't always care about logic. If the user dies holding a massive amount of emotion, like grudge or loyalty, the aura doesn't dissipate. It actually intensifies. This is called Post-Mortem Nen. This kind of Nen is insanely powerful and durable, literally fewer than 10 exorcists in the entire world, or should I say the entire Hunter world, can remove them. We also saw this with Pito, whose sheer loyalty allowed their headless corpse to keep fighting. And it gets crazier. Some geniuses weaponize their own death, setting it as an activation condition to boost their power or even resurrect themselves. It's so potent it can even override existing rules, like abilities remaining in Chrollo's book even after the original owner dies, that would normally make the ability vanish from Skill Hunter, but not this one. It only got stronger. And now I'd like to quickly mention Nen Beasts. They are basically just aura shaped into creatures that most of the time resemble living creatures, usually created by emitters or conjurers. They can range from simple puppets that follow your commands to fully autonomous monsters that act on their own to protect their users, like we see with the Guardian Beasts in the Succession War. And lastly, I'd like to tell you guys that a Nen user doesn't necessarily belong to just one category. Yes, there are the 100% enhancers like Gon, or 100% transmuters like Hisoka. However, a user can stand at the midpoint between two categories, or really anywhere along that spectrum. Killua, for example, is a transmuter enhancer midpoint, Leorio is an enhancer emitter, and Kurapika sits between conjurer and specialist. This expands the possibilities for Nen usage significantly. It makes a whole bunch of sense for Melody to be an emitter manipulator when you look at her technique. She projects her aura outward through her music, putting that emission to use. But she uses that projected sound to influence the listener's emotions and perception, which pulls directly from manipulation. And that's it. What do you think about Nen? Did I forget something of importance about Nen in here? If so, I'd gladly read your comments about it. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel, because about 98% of people seeing the video aren't subscribers, which is quite a lot, I should say. That's just the beginning. And that was it for today.